All right, good morning, everybody. What's going on? Uh, Huge night last night. Canelo Alvarez versus Dimitri Bivol, and I was surprised at how that fight went. I was surprised that Canelo lost so decisively. I did pick Canelo to win that fight by knockout last night, and I thought he was thoroughly outclassed and thoroughly beaten. I did not think the fight was even remotely competitive. And now that I've had some time to recollect on the fight and look back on the fight. And it's always interesting to hear and listen to other people's opinions. And you hear the fighters after the fight and what their thoughts were on their performances and what they thought about the fight. And then you hear all the interviews and all of the takes from all of the pundits and the reporters in the sport of boxing. And one common theme that I'm hearing right now is, uh, you know, Canelo took it a step too far in this fight by fighting at light heavyweight. He's not a real light heavyweight. Um, Dimitri Bivol, Dan Raphael even said that he felt Dimitri Bivol bullied Canelo, right? And now we're hearing that he should go back to 168 and he should not fight at 175 anymore. And a lot of people, to me, it seems as though they're implying that he lost this fight because he was the smaller man, right? And again, everyone has a right to their own opinion. I'm never going to be here and try to change anyone's opinion. All I can do is give you my opinion, and I can also uh, respectfully disagree with people. And that's what I'm going to do today, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's true. Talk Trends makes a great point. He goes, Joe, they was telling us Canelo can beat Usyk. Funny how times change. Yeah. So to me, I don't think Dimitri Bivol, um, you know, used physical tactics, and I don't think he bullied Canelo. I don't think this was a fight in which size was the determining factor. Now, again, the height and reach, of course, are going to play a factor in the fight. But how many fighters had the height and reach against Canelo throughout the course of his career, right? But he was always able to figure a way out to win those fights. Even Mayweather's always been the smaller man, right? For a great part of his career. And he had to use his skill and his athletic attributes in order to win the fight, right? So it's no secret that Canelo is always, for the most part, going to have a height and reach disadvantage, no matter who he fights. If he goes down and fights David Benavidez has similar dimensions as Dimitri Bivol. He's 6 feet and he's got like a 72. I think he's got even a longer reach, if I'm not mistaken, 74-inch reach, right? Jamel Charlos is about 6 feet. He's got a 72-inch reach. So he's always going to have that height and reach disadvantage no matter who he fights. And you can argue, right? You can argue that Sergey Kovalev, who's got similar height and reach dimensions to Dimitri Bivol, you can even argue that he's much bigger than Dimitri Bivol because he's going up to cruiserweight. His next fight's going to be at cruiserweight. And the same thing with Callum Smith, who was like 6'4", had like a 74, 75-inch reach, if I'm not mistaken. Like 6'3", excuse me, like 6'3". He's a much bigger fighter than Canelo. Now, granted, they fought at 168, but once again, for all intents and purposes, you can argue that Caleb Smith was a light heavyweight trying to squeeze down to 168. Now, is that why he lost? No, but once again, he just couldn't hurt Canelo, and he wasn't able to stop Canelo from coming forward. And Canelo was able to pin him up against the ropes and Callum Smith wasn't uh, successful against Canelo. But once again, he was the much bigger fighter, just as Sergey Kovalev was the much bigger fighter, right? Daniel Jacobs, another 6 foot guy, 72, 73 inch reach. All these guys had height and reach advantages over Canelo. So they had the size advantage too, in my opinion. Now you can argue, Daniel Jacobs isn't as big as Dimitri Bivol. He's not as thick, but to me, Dimitri Bivol is not a big, thick guy. He's a lean, tall, lean guy. He's like 6 feet, 72 inch reach. I just don't think that the size was the biggest reason why Canelo lost this fight last night. In my opinion, watching this fight last night, I was surprised how fast Dimitri Bivol's foot and hand speed were. I thought his foot speed was much quicker than Canelo Alvarez. That's why he was able to outmaneuver Canelo Alvarez in this fight, right? And I was also surprised at how quick his hands were. Like he was getting off three punch combinations and landing like 3-4 punch combinations and landing like 2-3 punches in the sequence, right? And we've always seen in the past how Canelo has had problems with guys who moved, guys who don't spend long periods of time standing in front of him in the pocket and exchange with them, right? We've seen that how movement has troubled him, right? We've seen how the jab has troubled him, particularly in the first Triple G fight. Like Triple G was really out jabbing him, and he was really picking him apart in the first fight, in my opinion. Even though I had the fight close, I still think that Triple G clearly won the fight. I even thought Triple G won the second fight, and once again I thought it was because of the success of his jab. So we've seen Canelo have some problems with guys who have the good stick, right? Seen Canelo have problems with guys who have the movement. But as the fight wears on, I think his ability to cut the ring off in a lot of instances and his ability to hurt guys have bailed him out. So whenever he was struggling with a guy, he was able to take it to the inside and change the fight with the inside work by grinding out some successful body work that helped slow his opponent down. And also, he would land a big punch that would turn the fight. He would hurt the guy, and that would bail him out. So his power and his inside fighting would bail him out in fights that he struggled. And there's been times when he would be on the ropes and he would suck guys in, and the traps that he sets on the ropes would work against some of these guys. But those traps were not working last night because Dimitri Bivol wouldn't bite on those traps. He wouldn't get sucked into a fight that Canelo Alvarez wanted to fight. Canelo Alvarez, I thought, as Dimitri Bivol mentioned, was just throwing power shots. He was throwing one punch at a time, in my opinion, and he was looking to land that home run shot. Now, again, you have to credit Dimitri Bivol for not allowing him to be able to be in a position where he could throw the combinations that he wanted to throw. But Dimitri Bivol used a lot of subtle movement, right? He would move in and out, but when he was going in, he never went deep into the pocket. He kept this fight mid to long range, never allowed Canelo to get deep in the pocket for long periods of time. And every time Canelo got close, Dimitri Bivol would slide back and step around him, right? And every time he would slide back and step around him, he would always touch him with the jab. So he was constantly touching Canelo, breaking up his rhythm, not allowing him to get set. And like I said, the foot speed was just too quick, right? And the hand speed was just too quick. I just thought that this was a guy who outmaneuvered, right? Outpunched, beating him on the front foot, beating him on the back foot, and he never got greedy. He fought a disciplined fight, threw a lot of punches, but he didn't get overzealous. He didn't get overexcited. I thought that the moment could possibly get to him, but it didn't. He fed off of the crowd going against him. That was a motivating factor for him in this fight. So yeah, he had the height and reach advantage, but so did a lot of other fighters, right? Yeah, he was the bigger guy. Okay, but so were a lot of other fighters. We need to give this guy credit for being the ring general in there, right? Having a great game plan and being able to frustrate Canelo and fighting the fight that he wanted and not getting sucked into Canelo Alvarez's fight. So this whole thing that, oh well, he was the bigger man, he bullied Canelo. No, he outsmarted Canelo last night, and he won this fight with his brain, right? His brain and his speed, right? You would think that Canelo Alvarez would have the faster hands in this fight, but he didn't. I Bivol was very sharp last night. He was very quick, and I just felt as though if you're going to sit there and say that he just won this fight because he was the bigger man, then I think you're missing a lot of the little nuances that were happening last night with Bivol. Just the way he was moving, the way he was going in and out, the way he was punching. Right when Canelo Alvarez was coming forward, he always made sure that he touched him with something, whether it was hard or not. He wasn't just going to allow Canelo Alvarez to come forward and get in the pocket and set up shop and just start ripping to the body. And we also have to give him credit because he knew what Canelo was going to do before Canelo did it. He was ahead of the game here. His anticipation of Canelo's attacks, right? And Canelo's he had a good sense of the punches Canelo Alvarez was going to throw. He had a good sense of the attack patterns, and if you noticed, even the body shots, even when Canelo was trying to get close, and he was in the pocket for those brief moments, those body shots that he was landing, they were being caught on the arms and the elbows of Dimitri Bivol, right? So this was a guy who had Canelo Alvarez scouted to a T, right? He followed a lot of the same things he admittedly as he confessed to after the fight. He watched that Sergey Kovalev fight, and he saw a lot of the things that Kovalev was doing and how he had success, keeping him outside with the jab and just keeping that jab in his face and just touching him with the jab to disrupt the rhythm, right? Because when you're touching a guy, he has to react to you. He has to be, you're putting him on defense, right? And you're keeping his hands in his pocket, so to speak, because he's forced to have to defend you, defend, and not when he's defending, he can't um be offensive, right? And especially, if you're being kept on the outside and you're the shorter guy with the shorter reach, you're forced to defend because you're not in any position to initiate offense, right? So to me, this was a fight about Dimitri Bivol's foot speed, hand speed, his ring generalship, being able to gauge the distance, anticipating what Canelo was going to do, and being able to defend against it. There was no surprises. Even the uppercut that landed, to me, it didn't really land flush. A lot of these punches Canelo did land, I felt as though they were partially blocked. Now, Canelo said that he felt as though a lot of punches Bivol landed were partially blocked. Yes, but in those punch sequences, there was always one punch that landed flush. And you could see Canelo Alvarez's head snap back. You could see the bruising of his face. That doesn't mean anything that he's bruised his face. He is fair skinned, and that doesn't really mean anything. But you could tell how cleanly those punches were landing, right? So a big focus is on the scorecards, 115 to 113. And I'm not here to sit there and if you had the fight close, whatever. I don't do a lot of scorecard shaming because the scoring is very subjective. I gave Canelo 3 rounds in this fight. Most people I talked to gave him 3 rounds. The general consensus out there in terms of the scoring, from what I've heard, is most people scored the fight 9 rounds to 3 for Dimitri Bivol, and that's even Eddie Hearn, who's really pulling hard for Canelo in this fight, had it 9 rounds to 3. Could it have been 8-4? I don't know, possibly. 7-5 does seem like a stretch to me. Seems like you're trying to give him every benefit of the doubt. And I hear a lot of fans say, "Well, I'm scoring the fight as if I'm scoring the fight as if how I believe the judges would have scored it." And I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know. Could you have given Canelo the first round? Possibly. I know some people were saying that possibly he could give Canelo the sixth round. I don't know, but all four judges, oddly enough, scored this fight very similarly. I think they had identical scorecards. They had the first four rounds for Canelo. Let me pull up these cards again. I know they had the first all three judges scored the first four rounds for Canelo, and they gave him the ninth, and I think they gave him the sixth too, because that was another round that people were saying possibly could have went to Canelo. And I know when I was watching, I went back and watched it on the Barstool Sports telecast, and they were saying that they felt the sixth round was close. I gave it to Bivol. I'm not sure if it was close, but I did think that Canelo won that sixth round. So I don't know. I just think if giving Canelo every benefit of the doubt, I only gave him 3 rounds. So I just didn't think that this fight was competitive. Let me look at the scorecards here from the judges. So yeah, so the judges gave Bivol the first 4 rounds, and they gave him the ninth. All three scored it identical. So yeah, that's how they came to their scorecards. So none of the judges gave Canelo the sixth. So they had Bivol winning rounds 4 through 8 and 10 through 12. I think the big thing that stands out for me is giving Canelo the first 4 rounds. I think if at the very most, maybe you can give him 2 or 3 of the first 4 rounds, but I have a hard time even with that. I gave Canelo rounds 2 and 3, and I could have easily. I thought 3 was close enough where you could have even given 3 to Bivol. So I could have had a 10-2 scorecard. So yeah, I had it 2-2 after 4 as well, boxing with Sean. I gave Canelo the second and third round. How did you score the first 4 rounds, Sean? I'm just curious. Did you give him the first and the fourth, or did you give Canelo the second and the third? I gave Canelo the second and the third. Or did you even give Canelo the second and the fourth? Could the fourth round have gone to Canelo in your opinion? Because I just didn't see it. Like I said, I had it 2-2 after 4. But regardless of that, I mean, we can go back and forth with the scorecards all we want, but the right guy got the decision. But like I said, 7-5 to me seems to be a little bit of a stretch. But I just find it funny how all three judges scored the first 4 rounds for Canelo, and they gave the ninth round to Canelo. So they all had identical scorecards. That was a little bizarre to me, if I'm being honest. That's a little bizarre. So yeah, Neil Sinclair said I had it 2-1 Canelo and 1 tied after 4. Well, that's fine. I just to sit there and say that Dmitry Bivol did not win at least one of the first 4 rounds. Again, that's a stretch, but I'm not going to go crazy about it. I know a lot of people are saying after the fight, this just goes to show that they were trying to rob Bivol, and the fight was just way closer than it should have been. And I know Teddy Atlas was on Twitter rallying, ranting about the scorecard. Shout out to Mike Coppinger. He did ask a tough question. He did come out there and say, that he thought the scorecards were a little bit off. So he wasn't afraid to give his opinion. I've never been really a huge fan of Mike Coppinger, but at least I can agree with him on this thing that I don't think that the fight was close. I just don't. But now the question remains, should there be a rematch here? And why does a guy who obviously he's the name, we know that, and why does a guy who's not the champion, and in my opinion, everyone feels as though lost this fight decisively. If you ask the majority of people out there, and again, this is just people's opinions. We're not going to scorecard shame. If you had it close, you had it close. We're not. Again, there was certain fights I had close, and people tell me I'm crazy too. So as long as you had the right man winning, it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, to me, this fight was not even competitive. Most people that were watching this fight, they did not have it competitive either. Like I said, the Barstool Sports guys thought that Canelo won three rounds at best. I know Jessica McCaskill had him winning 3 rounds at best. Chris Mannix had him winning 3 rounds at best. Most people, Sergio Mora, I think said he had it 8-4. I don't know, but most people had this fight 9 rounds to 3 for Bivol. Right now, we're hearing again, Bivol was too big. 175 is too much for Canelo. But we weren't hearing these things before the fight. Everyone, and myself included. I mean, I thought I picked him to win by knockout, and he didn't win. I just don't like even Canelo is saying, well, this was the 175 is not my weight division. So then why were you saying that you were going to unify the division? Why did you have fights scheduled even after this fight? Like they were confident they were going to win this fight. So they knew that they were going to be fighting at 175. So let's not act like he lost just because of the weight class. I mean, we got to give Bivol credit for what he did in there, how he executed the game plan and how disciplined he was, how he didn't get caught up in the moment. Like I said, he was the faster guy with his hands and his feet. He looked like the more technical boxer, setting up his shots and moving in and out and not standing in front of Canelo. He was even being the counter puncher. He was winning on the back foot and the front foot. Like Canelo was resorting to throwing one punch at a time because he was getting frustrated in there. So this wasn't a case of a guy like this wasn't a case of like Tyson Fury just going in there and mauling somebody when he's the bigger guy and just imposing his will. Like Bivol didn't really impose his will on Canelo. He outsmarted and outfoxed him and outmaneuvered him, right? In my opinion. So I think that we're taking away from Bivol, and this is my opinion. I think we're taking away from Bivol when we say things like, "Oh well, he was just too big." Oh well, Canelo Alvarez really isn't a light heavyweight, and maybe he's not a light heavyweight, really. But is he? But again, even super middleweight, he's still going to be giving up height and reach advantages even at super middleweight, right? And like I said, not to beat a dead horse, if you're coming on late, Kovalev, you can argue is bigger than Bivol. But then, he was past it. He was 36 years old. Okay, but when Floyd beat Canelo, he was 36 years old, right? And Canelo was 20. Ooh, how old was Canelo? Like 24 when Floyd fought him. Let me. I want to get this straight because I'm going to go back to an example that I've used before, right? So Canelo Alvarez is what? Canelo Alvarez age, right? He's 31 now, right? So when he fought, okay, so he was 23, right? So Sal Alvarez was 23 on fight night, an age where most fighters are just entering their prime. He already had 40 something fights. He was already a champion, right? He was already a champion, right? So people want to say he was green, but again, Floyd was almost 40. He was 36 years old. He was closer to 40 than he was 30. Let's put it that way. So if Floyd isn't considered past it at 36, then even though Kovalev, abused himself a little bit, it was in some tough fights with Ward, but other than those two Ward fights, Kovalev was dominant for the most part of his career, so he wasn't really taking a ton of punishment. And then you can argue, well, the yard fight he took punishment. Yeah, he had a rough patch, right? But again, like we want to just put these asterisks next to certain wins, right? Oh well, Kovalev was past it. Okay, well, what about Usyk, who's going to be 36 now when he's going to be fighting Joshua in the rematch? No one's giving Joshua. No one's saying Usyk is past it. So again, because fighters have aren't as successful at when they get older, and other fighters are. And then you could say, well, certain fighters don't take punishment. Well, again, if you don't take punishment, that's a testament to how skilled you are, right? We can go back and forth all day and make these excuses for why a guy did this or why a guy did that, but at the end of the day, the record books are going to be what the record books are. He did beat a bigger guy in Sergey Kovalev that was bigger than Dmitry Bivol, that was very skilled. He was able to land that punch, right? And if he didn't land that punch in the 11th round, right? If he didn't land that punch and the fight went the distance, he would have lost on the scorecards because he was behind. So the punch bailed him out there, right? And again, he fought a guy in Caleb Smith, 6'3", huge reach advantage. And this guy immediately after the fight went up to 175. Kovalev immediately went up to cruiser. Well, not immediately, but he took some time off, and now his next fight's going to be at cruiserweight, right? So these guys are bigger than Dmitry Bivol. But once again, Canelo was able to figure out a way to beat those guys, right? And those guys had the size advantage. And those guys, Kovalev was a 175 pounder, and I guess there was a rehydration clause or whatever. I don't know what it was. I don't know. Maybe I guess they're saying he couldn't put on more than 10 pounds or something like that. So the morning, I think it was the morning of the fight, but once again, he could still could have gotten bigger. He still could have weighed a lot more on the night of the fight, right? So yeah, I guess there was a 10-pound, some type of rehydration clause. I don't know what it was, but there was no rehydration clause for this fight, right? So you can look at it however you want, but Canelo has been the smaller man, just as Floyd Mayweather has been the smaller man. So when you're the smaller man and you want to be considered a great fighter, you have to be able to have a plan B, and you have to be able to win with your skills, right? Supposedly, going into this fight, most of us thought that even though Bivol was skilled, we thought Canelo was more skilled. Bivol proved most of us wrong, right? Proved me wrong. I thought that Canelo would be able to get inside, go to the body, and I thought he would wear Bivol down. But again, Bivol's speed and footwork, and just his overall ability to gauge the distance, right, and his timing, and just knowing what to do, what punches to throw, and when to throw them, right, being able to see and anticipate what Canelo was going to do, right, and being ahead of, like, he was a step ahead of Canelo all night because in his mind he knew what Canelo was going to do, and he had a game plan to counteract that, right? So again, I don't think that this was a fight that was won with size alone. I think we have to give, or we should give. We don't have to do anything, but I think we should give Bivol the credit for having the better game plan and having the intelligence and the mental discipline to be able to implement that throughout the course of the whole 12 rounds. He had the whole crowd against him. The whole promotion was against him. He had the weight of the world on his shoulders with all the Russian Ukraine things going on. And to me, I'm just going to be honest. I hate to get political. I'm just going to be honest, right? If you're not going to play the Russian national anthem, then you shouldn't play the Mexican national anthem or the United States national anthem. You should have just not played any national anthems at all. To me, that was a slap in the face to Bivol, once again, because there are a lot of people in Russia who are not in line with the politics of Vladimir Putin. And I'm going to say another thing. The whole thing about Klitschko coming out and saying that Bivol should not be allowed to fight. Once again, we don't know the politics of every Russian person or athlete out there. So to assume that everyone is in line with Putin is I think it's wrong. But I don't want to spend. No, you don't always have to play the national anthem. I've seen many fights where the national anthem has not been played. They don't play the national anthem for every fight. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they even play the national anthems for Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano? I don't I don't believe they did in that fight. So it's not a rule. It's not a rule that they have to play the national anthem. So in this case, I think they should have just not played any national anthem and they should have just went along with the fight, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. So I don't know. Kid Block says yes. Mr. Vega says it wasn't played in Spence versus Ugas. Yeah, I don't remember hearing it in Spence versus Ugas. Danny Drew says yeah, they did play it for Taylor versus Serrano. I'll have to go back. I don't remember it, but I do know that they didn't play it for Spence versus Ugas, and I don't think they played it for Pacquiao versus Ugas either. So there are instances where they don't play the national anthem, but I'm not going to really harp on that. But I guess that just goes to show and speaks to how I believe Bivol was just kind of minimized in this fight. And I like what he said after the fight. He said, "Well, if I'm going to go through with the rematch, then I want to be treated." Okay, they played 3 national anthems on Taylor Restaurant. My apologies. I stand corrected. I don't remember. Maybe I for some reason I don't remember it. I don't know. But I stand corrected. Ryan Hong says bet the house on Canelo in the rematch. 113, 115, 113 was mad. Yeah, I get it. I get it. But yeah, I like I said, I have a lot of respect for Eddie Hearn. I have a lot of respect for Matchroom. But my problem is these rematch clauses. Usyk, I thought clearly beat Joshua. He was the mandatory, and then he accepted the rematch clause. It is what it is. But I think that in that fight he won so clearly and so dominantly that I'm not sure if a rematch is warranted against Joshua. It is what it is. But to me, this fight was even more clear and even more dominant from with Bivol here, right? So I don't even think that this fight warrants a rematch. And if I'm Canelo Alvarez's team, and they were still non-committal about the rematch too. They were saying, well, maybe we'll have to go back and look and assess the situation. So maybe they're not going to have the rematch because I would rather Bivol fight the winner of Joe Smith versus Artur Beterbiev. I'd like to see the division unified. I think that's a more significant fight, right? But another thing that Carpenter made a good point about, and I'm giving him some credit because he did make some good points yesterday. He said that this will probably make the Canelo Triple G fight more interesting now because we've seen Canelo look vulnerable last night, right? And we most people were thinking that the Triple G fight was not needed, and I still thought the Triple G fight was not needed, right? But Triple G looked so good. He got off to a little bit of a slow start because of the long layoff, but he ended up turning in a great performance against Murata, right? Whereas Canelo looked a little vulnerable last night, right? So maybe this makes that match a little bit more intriguing, right? And now people are gonna say, well, now you're gonna hear a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks say, well, Canelo Alvarez should have taken the PBC deal. This was a mistake, blah 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 blah. But once again, I don't want the narrative. And this is just my opinion. I don't think the narrative should be, oh well, Bivol was just too big. 175 is not Canelo's weight class because we weren't. I mean, people were even saying, mentioning about Canelo fighting Usyk at 201 and fighting Makabu at cruiserweight. So again, skill won the fight last night more so than the size. Because anyone can be big, but you have to know how to use your size, and you have to know how to use your height and reach. So many fighters are taller and they do have long reaches and they do have size advantages, but on many occasions, they're not able to utilize that because their opponent is just so skilled that they take those advantages away from you. If you're going to be a great fighter, right, you have to be able to take your opponent's advantages away from him, not allow him to do the things that he does well, not allow him to do those things. You have to take those advantages away. Canelo Alvarez last night was not able to do that, right? Now, is he still a great fighter? I mean, based off of accomplishments, but one thing that I think has to be said is Canelo Alvarez has never had the greatest foot speed. He's never the quickest guy in the world on his feet. He does have a history and did have a history of fading late in fights. Wasn't always a guy who put out a high output, right? Fights at a slow pace, right? Fights in spurts. So there is some things that if you're an opponent of Canelo Alvarez, there are some weaknesses there that can be exploited, and it's easier said than done. But there is some things that you could look at from Canelo Alvarez as a fighter and say, well, if I keep him on the outside, if I don't stand in front of him, if I, throw my jab a lot, not looking to throw a ton of power punches, but just keep him at bay with my jab and try to offset him and not let him get into his rhythm, not let him get close to me. There's a lot of things that fighters can do and look at and say to themselves, I can win this fight. And like I said, that's what Dmitry Bivol did. He looked at that Kovalev fight and he saw, and he said this over and over again, he saw how much success Kovalev had in that fight. And he took a lot away from that fight and implemented that into his game plan and carried it out to a T last night against Canelo, right? Well, Ronan says, but most fighters are not Bivol. Yeah, that's true. But again, we weren't saying that before the fight. How many people in this chat besides the boxing historian? Shout out to the boxing Brian. Shout out to Brian, the boxing historian, because he was the only guy that I've heard that was picking Bivol in this fight. No one picked Bivol that I know of, right? So there is going to be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, and you're not going to hear any of it from me. I thought Canelo was going to knock him out. I was fucking wrong. I was wrong. I was way off in what I said was going to happen. But again, I'm not going to turn around and say, oh, well, he lost because Bivol was too big. Oh, he lost because he was in the wrong. No. You can't have it both ways, bro. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. Bivol won because he was big, he was faster, and he had a better game plan, and he fought a smarter fight, and and it's one thing having the better game plan, but Bivol was disciplined enough, because how many other fighters out there would have been caught up in the moment, right? And would have had a hard time staying focused and not carry out the game plan the way Bivol was able to. How many other fighters would have wilted in that big moment? Now you can argue, well, Bivol's been an amateur for a long time. He's been all around the world, whatever, fought all different types of styles, but I don't think anything could prepare him for what he faced last night in terms of the magnitude of an event. And credit to Caleb Plant, because a lot of people before the end of that fight, they had that fight close. I actually had that round five rounds to 5. I thought the fight was even before Canelo knocked out Caleb Plant. A lot of people I spoke to had it 6-4. Obviously, the fight was turning, but Plant was still in that fight, right? He still won rounds. Still won rounds. Like Plant made a good account of himself in that fight. He overexceeded my expectations. Like I said, I had the fight even, and definitely the fight was turning, right? No question about it. The fight was turning, but he got off to a good start. He got off to a good start, and he did get hit with that one shot that turned the fight, and it was over. But once again, we've seen guys give Canelo problems with movement. We can't just ignore the fact that in every weight class, in junior middleweight, right? There was Erislandy Lara and Austin Trout. I had the Austin Trout fight, a draw. And I had Erislandy Lara beating Canelo, right? So we've seen in every weight class that he's fought in, guys who can really move, right? And guys who really are able to utilize the stick, the jab, and guys who are able to gauge distance well, guys who are able to beat him. He's has shown vulnerability on the outside, even at junior middleweight. We've seen it at middleweight. Like I thought he lost both Golovkin fights. You can make an argument he won the second one. I'm not going to say that you're wrong if you scored it for Canelo. I'm not gonna argue against that. But not many people gave him the first fight, right? And a big part of that was, I think, Golovkin was beating him on the outside. He was beating him on the outside. Canelo once again spent a lot of time. Like Canelo tries to. Sometimes he thinks he's Floyd Mayweather, and a lot of these guys think they're Floyd Mayweather, that they can just lie on the ropes and suck someone into a big counter shot, right? But it just doesn't always work out that way. He was lying on the ropes in that first Triple G fight, trying to play the counterpunch role, but that one punch that he needed to turn the fight in that fight never materialized, right? So at every level, we've seen Canelo have problems with guys who are able to dictate the pace with the jab on the outside, guys who can move. Erislandy Lara at junior middleweight. We've seen have problems with Golovkin at middleweight, and this was a supposedly older version of Golovkin, right? Not in his prime, whatever. We can go back and forth and do this prime argument, but my argument's always going to be, well, why are some guys still in their prime at 36 and other guys are, well, that's because they took more punishment. Okay, well, you took more punishment because of how you fight. Like if you don't have a style that is going to enable you to not take punishment as you get older, if you don't have a plan B and C, and you just have a plan A, if you're just a guy who relies on athleticism, or you're just a guy who relies on your power, or you're just a guy who relies on being physically imposing and physically aggressive, and you don't have that plan B to fall back on, like a Floyd Mayweather had, like an Andre Ward had, like a Bernard Hopkins had, right? Like all these great fighters had, like a Lennox Lewis had, like a Tyson Fury. All the greats were able to be successful and win in different ways. I'm going to use a phrase that Joe Calix has used. When he described Tyson Fury can be whoever he needs to be in order to win. And if you're a fighter who can't be whoever you need to be to win, and you can only be one type of individual, and you don't have that versatility, right? Like Roy Jones was a guy who got by on mostly his athleticism. He did a lot of things wrong. He wasn't the most fundamentally sound guy in the ring. And as he got older and the reflexes slowed down, then we saw how different of a fighter he was. So when you have guys like Mike Tyson, you got guys like Roy Jones, automatically, right? The window of prime gets abbreviated. And then the explanation of that is, oh, well, that's because they fought this way. They took damage. They did this. Again, whose fault is that? You are who you are. Like the great Customato. I'm doing a lot of name dropping right now, but like the great Customato said, people who are born around don't die square. You are who you are, right? But then a guy like Floyd Mayweather, who's at 36 years old, right, fighting a guy who's 23, right? He's past it, and this guy's green. I mean, you can't have it both ways. I just get sick of hearing these double standards. Like certain guys, like Usyk right now is going to be 36 by the time he fights Anthony Joshua in the rematch, right? Is he past his prime? Oh well, he doesn't have a lot of miles on him because he's only had 19, 20 fights. Again, but are we going to just ignore all the training camps? Are we going to ignore all the amateur fights? Are we just going to ignore the World Series of boxing stuff? So that's the thing. So I don't like how we have this double standard in assessing the primes of fighters, right? Thank you so much, the Axiom. He says last night was unbivolable. That's funny. But yeah, so that's the thing. So people, I think, will say Canelo lost because he's not a light heavyweight. They'll say he lost because he was smaller. But my opinion is he lost because Bivol showed that he was the more skilled fighter, and he implemented his game plan, and he was able to outclass Canelo last night, in my opinion. I think. All right, here he is, the superstar, the guy who saw it coming and was saying it for weeks, the boxing historian. Let me ask you a quick question and tell me if I'm wrong here, because I love to have I like to have differences of opinion here. Am I wrong by saying that size was not the major determining factor last night, and the determining factor was just Bivol's skill? Like Bivol outsmarted Canelo, and he outmaneuvered Canelo, and he out hustled Canelo last night, in my opinion. Now, by saying that he he bullied Canelo, or he beat Canelo because he was the bigger man, does that kind of really downplay the level of skill he showed last night, in your opinion? Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, first and foremost, salute to ringside reporters, salute to Joe B, JC, salute to y'all, man. I think if we want to do pound for pound skill wise, like I've been saying, Bivol is one of the most technically skilled boxers in today's boxing, regardless of weight class. And I believe that and I think that it does kind of take away at 175. I mean, because 168, 175 can be very interchangeable because a lot of those guys walk around between 195 and 185. How big of a difference is that, in terms of cutting weight. But um, what I would say is I think that, it does detract from it because certain individuals out here probably don't want to acknowledge the level of skill that this man possessed in the style that we've always seen give Canelo Alvarez trouble. People want to big up, say that Dimitri Bivol, or I mean not Demi- I mean Demetrius Andrade, excuse me, and other guys have that slick style. But what about Bivol? And he's in a whole nother weight class than these guys, and he's shown to beat better guys. He's actually beaten better guys than Benavidez, Charlo, Demetrius Andrade. If you want to combine their records compared to his, it's all comparable if you combine it all. You know what I'm saying? I think that Bivol was definitely the toughest assignment between 160, between 175, 160. If if the name's not Art Beterbiev, is going to be Bivol, and I think that, you know, if we were to be honest, like it was going to be an uphill battle for Canelo Alvarez to overcome that. The jab, the ability to move, and the combination punching, the hand speed, and the fundamental skill of Bivol is on a different level. And I was saying this for a minute. I mean, people want to talk about the Charlo and Benavidez fight, like, and I'm looking at some of these people like that don't like Canelo, right? There's people that don't like Canelo that sitting up here calling he got beat by a Euro bum. Like, bro, he will beat the dog shit out of Charlo, out of Benavidez. I don't care what happened in sparring. He's going to beat those guys in a professional bout when there's no headgear on and it's the 8 ounce gloves on. He's beating those guys. He's outboxing Triple. He's knocking out. I think he's stopping Andrade. Like this, like I mean, to me, when I look in from a standpoint of a fan of Canelo, like let's say if you're a fan of Canelo, I mean, he went up and he challenged himself against a top level boxer, and throwback fighters do that. You know, this loss doesn't really take away from anything that he. I mean, yeah, there's a blueprint out there, but I mean, Mayweather put that blueprint out there 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's not hard to see, and we all know that. And you are, and like you said, you are what you are, right? When you quoted Customato. At the end of the day, um, just because Bivol did this to Canelo does not mean that those other guys are going to do the same exact thing. Because you know why? Because they don't have the same skill set or the same level. They don't have a jab. First and foremost, they don't have a jab like that. A jab goes a long way. And if you have an elite jab, you can be an elite fighter. Those guys do not have nothing like that in comparable to Bivol. And I still see all three of those guys. I mean, Benavidez has a chance if he stands in the pocket and be aggressive, and maybe he can catch Canelo with something. But all those guys are probably getting stopped by Canelo. And that's in what, and this is and I'm just saying this is a testament to how good Demetrius Bivol is. And one thing I always preach, man, on here: do not believe the media hype fighters. Do not believe the hype. Go with what is real. I don't care if a guy is from Eastern Europe. You don't know who he is. If that dude can box, look, analyze that guy first before picking, a wash up. And I'm not saying nobody in general. I'm just seeing some comments in certain videos of these guys that hate Canelo and people that are kind of trying to, pretty much turning their back on Canelo. Like, bro, it was. I mean, that for me, it was pretty obvious, and I was only saying 60-40 just to give the pound for pound number one fighter a chance. But I was really thinking 70-30, maybe 80-20 and coming into this fight. When you move up to 175 in a higher weight division and against someone of that skill level, and he's going to make you look bad. I mean, but does that take away from the skill set that Canelo has, his head movement, everything that we've seen him improve on since the Floyd Mayweather fight? No, it's just that you're not going to look like picture. You're not going to look picture perfect, especially when you fight consistently the way Canelo has against the level of opponents he has, and consistently challenging yourself and move up in weight. It's just not gonna. You're not going to look picture perfect, and you're going to catch an L somewhere along the line. I'm seeing Terrence Crawford, my favorite fighter, saying, "Oh, who's number one now?" Well, you know what, Terrence Crawford, who the fuck have you fought at welterweight that makes me believe that you're pound for pound number one over Canelo? You would never dare to be great and fight. And I love Crawford, but none of these guys that in the pound for pound that we talking about, Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford. I'm not saying everybody want, but the media hype guys that everybody loves and adores and shit, right? These guys wouldn't do that. You ain't gonna go up and challenge no. You guys asking for a catch weight, man. Errol Spence asking for a 164 fight, bro. Move up and fight him at 160 or one of the legitimate weight classes. So I'm just saying, like, bro, Canelo losing didn't change my thought about him. I think he's the only guy that has a shot to be an all-time great. Usyk maybe, you know what I'm saying, but the rest of these guys, man, you guys are all hype, man. To me, that's just I'm just looking at it from a classical boxing perspective, from a traditional perspective. The man went up and challenged a top level guy at light heavyweight. I referenced Ray Robinson fighting Joey Maxson, for the light heavyweight title. And that was a bigger weight disparity than what we saw, and that was a different fight that we saw. But do we knock Ray Robinson? No, he's still possibly the greatest fighter ever. And he lost that fight. He passed out due to the heat exhaustion. You know, Bob Foster, like I referenced before, great, probably the best, second best light heavyweight all time. You know what I'm saying? You know, right next to Archie Moore. The dude dominated a whole weight class legitimately, all time great. He moved up and challenged himself. He wasn't afraid to let his old go. A lot, unlike a lot of these cowardly boxers that wait and marinate fights. And Canelo's not one of those guys. He's an exception, and he moved up to a heavyweight. And what did he do? He challenged himself against Frazier, Ali, all them guys. He got beat. But does that take away from his career? No. So, in reference to Canelo, just because he lost the first time in 10 years, the most active fighter in the last 10 years, fighting the top level competition that nobody else in boxing has done, that does not take away from him and his accomplishment. Shout out to Bivol, shout out to Canelo. But I'm gonna just say this with a lot of these media hypes of fighters and these fans living off of this and buying this bullshit media hype and this madness. Understand the sport of boxing. Understand how things used to be done, and then you will appreciate what Canelo tried to do, man, last night a whole lot more.
All right, my man, what you need. It's been a long time. It's always nice to have you back. Give me your thoughts on this, man. I mean, I know you're a big proponent of looking at a fight and breaking down the little nuances and idiosyncrasies, and you don't just make generic blanket statements. You really get down deep into tactics, right? Tell me what you saw last night, and do you agree with the narrative that Canelo lost just because he was the smaller man? Let me unmute you, brother, real quick. There you go. Let me see. Unmute the mic. Oh, I guess it says you got to unmute yourself, brother. It says you're muted. I can't unmute you for some reason. Oh, there we go.
I'm good.
Yeah, you good.
All right. I was saying that I agree with you 100%. That skills was the deciding factor in this fight, not weight. Canelo, to me he looked fine, sharp. Everything was firing, but as we all know, the skills was the important thing. Bivol controls a fight from range, and he established that from the get-go, from round one. That jab was in Canelo's face, and it's not just a normal jab in the sense that, you know, some guys they throw hard jabs, or some guys they throw straight hard jabs, right? But Bivol can throw the jab from many different angles. Bivol can change the speed of the jab. He can change the power of the jab, the timing of the jab, and then he also has that nice foot movement, that footwork. And Canelo, we all know Canelo is not a fighter who actively moves a lot in a fight. He tries to be very economical with his footwork because he cannot maintain it for 12 rounds, right? He can't actively be moving for 12 rounds at a very high pace. And since the Arislandi Lara fight, I've been saying that I hope he's working on footwork drills and on sticking and moving for 12 rounds and 15 rounds and so on. I was hoping he worked on that element of his game. Clearly, he has not. And so that was what made me predict Bivol as the winner. From the moment I heard that he's facing Bivol and the fight was set, I was like, oh, Bivol's going to win this fight. Because Bivol has foot movement. That's his thing. You know, he controls range and distance, and pretty much from round 1 to round 12, that's what he was doing. Yeah, so pretty much I knew Bivol was going to win this fight, and I said I was surprised that a lot of people didn't see Bivol as winning this fight. I'm so shocked. I'm actually shocked that people couldn't see that. So, but I agree with you 100%. B, did you pick Bivol to win, right?
No, I picked Canelo to win by knockout, brother. I was wrong.
Wow.
I thought he would.
Okay.
I thought he would catch up to him and get on the inside and wear him down, bro. That's what I thought. I thought. Right. I thought it would have.
Well,
some
the thing I got wrong. The thing I got wrong was the judges' decision. I didn't expect the judges to give Bivol the fight,
Wow.
and they almost didn't. Yeah, they
When
almost
I
didn't because they had the
so
fight very close. This fight wasn't close.
so what was going through your mind when you heard 115 to 113? Because my
I thought they
instant
were going to rob
reaction,
him. I thought, I
yeah, my
honestly
that
thought,
was
I thought they were going to.
my instant reaction was, oh no, they're gonna do it again. That's the thing.
Yeah,
And
I
I was
didn't
like,
think I
oh,
didn't think they were ever going to give Bivol the fight because Canelo has a Triple G fight. He's the cash cow. It's Cinco de Mayo. I never thought they would give Bivol the fight,
it's crazy, right?
and they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they almost didn't because that margin 7-5. Come on, man. Bivol won. It was very clear that he won the fight, and I gave him. I think I gave Canelo what, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 2 or 3 rounds, 9-3, 10-2, something like that.
Yeah, I
I don't
had
think
it
he won
nine
much
three.
more than that.
I had it
There
nine
you
three.
go.
I mean, if you're generous, possibly
Yeah,
8-4, but I use the word generous. You have to be generous to even have it 8-4. So let me
extremely.
ask you, yeah, let me ask you a
Yeah.
question. If you're Canelo's manager, if you're Eddie Reynoso today, and you're thinking about where do we go from here? Are you even entertaining the thoughts of a rematch here?
What
If you're
here's
Eddie
the thing I
Reynoso,
like about Canelo. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. Canelo he made no excuses, which was really good because the last time an opponent almost beat him in Arislandy Lara, he made an excuse. He said how he ran and blah. And really and truly, the problem Canelo had has always been that he's explosive. You know, he has good footwork, but he's not consistent. In my opinion, he's not very consistent when it comes to moving around the ring at a certain pace. So if you are somebody who has active feet, that is to say, you're moving all the time. You can go for 12 rounds at a high pace, just sticking and moving. You have a very good chance, like Caleb Plant did, of beating Canelo. I predicted that Caleb Plant would beat Canelo. If anybody knows, this is what I said. And a lot of people overlooked Caleb Plant, but really and truly, Caleb Plant was doing quite well. At least BT Sports had him up ahead when he was facing Canelo. And then in the 11th round, Canelo caught him with, I believe it was a leaping left hook, followed by a right uppercut. And once Plant was knocked down, I didn't really see him take a knee. He just popped back up, and that was just a no-no. And so he got stopped. But Plant, I thought he was still in the fight. I thought it was pretty competitive. I was expecting it to go 12, but Canelo managed to stop him. You know, and I saw why in the 10th round, the body shot that he landed on him in the 10th. But for me, Canelo has difficulty with those kinds of styles. And then you're going to step up to this guy, Bivol, a guy who is known for his footwork and counterpunching and all those other ingredients. So, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
where
So
did they go from here? Uh,
yeah,
I think if I were them, I would. I mean, again, Canelo's a true champion. I think he would want the rematch, just like Anthony Joshua wants the rematch with Usyk. Just like immediate rematch is in order. I wouldn't say no to that because I understand he really truly wants to sort out his problem. The thing with it is, if he's going to go into a rematch, he has to work extra hard on his footwork, his foot activity, his activity with his feet. He has to get somehow more consistent with that. That should be his number one focus, his feet. And then he may have a chance of beating Bivol. But Bivol has been doing this since he was 5, so he has a lot of catching up to do. And they'll have to come with a pretty good game plan because in every single part of the ring, Bivol was actually outdoing Canelo. Literally, skill wise, he was just outplaying Canelo. He was outplaying him. I mean, how are you going to beat a guy who's outplaying you in every different department? When it comes to the jabs, he was out jabbing him. When they got on the inside, he'd shell up, and then he'd counterpunch, and his counterpunches would land. You know, he'd counter Canelo's counters. It reminded me of not Shakur versus Valdez, because they were mostly fighting from range. But once they were inside, Bivol made it his job to counter Canelo's counters. So, and the only time we ever saw somebody do that was with Mayweather and Canelo, when Mayweather and Canelo were in close, and Canelo might throw some shot or the other to the body or whatever, and Mayweather counter that counter. So to see Bivol countering Canelo's counters was quite an interesting thing. So he has that to work on as well. He has to figure out how he's going to outplay this guy, because this guy is all about outplaying him. So, I mean, he's got some work cut out for him. And even the jab, even Bivol's jab, how he mixed it up, I think was a problem for Canelo, because he couldn't time him. He couldn't time it. And then he's busier than Canelo. So I don't know, man. It's quite a challenge to take on. But I guess that's what boxers live for. They live for the challenge. So why not? Why not? Find a way. Yeah.
So you think he takes the rematch? Do you think? But you think he will take the rematch? But do you think he should take the rematch? Do you think he should even? Because now everyone's going to be, oh, he shouldn't fight at 175 anymore. He should go back down on 168. That's what everyone's going to say now. Monday morning quarterbacking. Go ahead.
Yeah, but why not take on this challenge? It is a hell of a challenge to take on. I mean, why is Anthony Joshua fighting Alexander Usyk next? Right? This is a guy that completely outclassed him, right? He's taking it. And that shows the mindset. He wants that challenge. And what if you're living for the challenge, this is a hell of an opportunity to take. Is it something that is risky? Absolutely. But is it something that's worth taking? And if you conquer it, you know, it does so much more for you personally. Absolutely. So if Canelo's that kind of fighter who wants to take the challenge on head on and deal with it once and for all, I'm not going to stand in his way. Absolutely. I go for it. It might affect his revenue, but you know, I guess he's going to discuss it with his team. But a Triple G fight right now, I don't know. That's a soft touch. I mean, he could probably do the Triple G fight and then go back and try and face Bivol when Bivol has more belts or something. But me personally, I think that's the way to go. A true champion wants to bounce back from his loss.
Yeah. Philly Drew, what's up?
I personally don't think, this is just me. I'm not the boxer. My mindset is as a fan right now. If I'm a boxer, it's totally different. But me as a fan, I don't see him beating Bivol right now. Me as a fan. It's just like how I don't see Anthony Joshua beating Usyk. I have to see it to believe it. But that's me as a fan. As a boxer, you can't think like that as a boxer. You have to think, you know, that it's possible, and push yourself mentally and in every other area to reach that challenge. You know, I didn't think Anthony Joshua would beat Andy Ruiz, and I was wrong. So it's possible I could be wrong, and Canelo could actually pull it off.
Yeah. Philly Drew, what's up, brother? What are your thoughts, man? Do you think that this was just Bivol just being too good, or do you think it was because he was too big? What's your opinion on this?
Canelo was beaten mentally and physically last night. This dude was completely outclassed in skill. He was completely bullied in that ring. And this dude completely was body language look uninterested after a while. He was frustrated. Like he couldn't, like he was so frustrated from getting outboxed, he literally walked away from the fight and then came back. And then tried to adjust by making it a phone booth fight. And Bivol adjusted and went back to the outside and boxed him. So if you look at it, Canelo tried to adjust a couple times. Bivol adjusted and countered him a couple times. This was a masterful fight. He outclassed him mentally and physically. To me, I think the rematch would be the same thing. It could even be a shutout. But even if like Canelo wasn't active enough, yeah, he wasn't active enough. But even if he was more active, he still would have lost this fight. It was just that Bivol was just a way better boxer last night than Canelo, and he bullied him. And no one expected Bivol to bully him like he did.
Who'd you pick, Drew?
I picked Canelo by 10th round stoppage.
Yeah, I picked
Bivol,
Canelo too.
Bivol had defensive lapses. He didn't have it last night.
Yeah. Bivol's been hurt against Smith and Richardson, and my thought was if Canelo hurt him, he would finish him. He wouldn't let him off the hook, or Canelo would be able to keep on him, and like when those other guys couldn't. But let's let Divine in, because like I was saying earlier, people are saying that the size was the determining factor in this fight, but I disagree with that narrative. I think he was out. I just think he was thoroughly outboxed, and he was outclassed and outskilled, in my opinion. That's where I thought the difference was. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, size did play a role, but I don't think it was the determining factor. I think that Bivol definitely was able to take Canelo's best punches, and I think there was a little bit of a demoralizing effect for Canelo. He's used to hurting fighters to the body, especially mid-rounds, the wear and tear, and Bivol high, tight guard defense, and Canelo couldn't really penetrate it. I mean, so that is a little bit about size, but also good defense. And yeah, 100% skill. Like if I had to choose one thing, it was definitely skill. Utilizing the jab. He was the taller, bigger fighter. He utilized that 100%, kept Canelo at distance, firing the right hand down the pipe. I wish he went to the body a little bit more. I thought it was available. But nonetheless, he was picking Canelo apart, especially at range. And what I liked towards like the 9th, 10th, 11th round, and even the 12th round, was he started to catch and shoot, right? And catching Canelo off guard. And, most fighters that Canelo fight, especially recently, is they cover up, right? They see Canelo attack. They either go back, move laterally, or they cover up. Bivol catching, shooting. And he started to catch Canelo flush. If Canelo didn't have that, nice head movement and the shoulder rolls and whatnot, he probably would have got hurt. But I don't know how you guys scored it. I went live during the entire fight, and I had it 9-3 for Bivol, and I feel like that's generous.
That's what I had.
And 15-13 is egregious in my opinion.
Yeah,
115 to 113 is absolutely asinine in my opinion, and it's like, oh, okay, so basically, if not one or two, if not all three of the judges probably had it a draw going into like the 10th round.
They did.
Yeah.
They did.
Which is insane.
Go ahead, Drew.
One of them had Canelo in the first 4 rounds, I think.
All three of them had Canelo winning the first 4 rounds. They had identical scorecards. They had Canelo winning the first 4, and they gave him the 9th. So it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I predicted. I didn't do a prediction video, unfortunately. I just moved into a new place. I was really busy these past couple of weeks, but I went on social media a little bit and I kind of talked to people. And when I went live tonight, or last night for you guys, I guess, to get ready to commentate the fight, I said that I think this is going to go 12. And I said, I think Bivol's going to do well. But I thought Canelo, because of the judges and being in Vegas and being in a hostile environment in regards to Bivol, that Canelo will get the nod, right? That's what I said. And it went 12. It's just that, fortunately, they did choose the right person. And, man, it just makes you wonder, right? It's like you go back to Mayweather Canelo, where one judge had it a draw when it clearly wasn't anything close to that. And if you're a fighter getting ready to prepare to go against Canelo, you've got to be hyper aware of that type of situation, of going in the ring, feeling like you did great for 10, 11 rounds out of the 12, and then you get scorecards that says 115, 113.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. What do you guys think of what Bivol said at the end of the fight when they asked him about the rematch. He said, "Well, I want to be treated, and I have to be treated like the champion." Do you think that him kind of being minimized in this fight and really being looked at as the B side and not even really respected as the champion? A lot of people didn't really respect him as the champion going into this fight, and it was they were talking about all these other fights Canelo was going to have after beating Bivol. Do you think that was like a chip on his shoulder? That gave him a chip on his shoulder. Do you think that made him even perform better? Right? What do you guys think of that?
Like, I was watching the whole thing, and I said, why are they disrespecting this dude? He's the champion. He should be walking out second. I don't care. Canelo's the cash cow now, but Bivol is the defending champion. Why is he not walking out second? Why are they not even treating it as he's a champion? And another thing I wanted to bring out, and I don't think a lot of people brought this up, Canelo only landed 84 punches in that fight. That had to be like a career low in this career.
Yeah.
And people bring that up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like slick.
And you
defense.
can tell that Canelo was.
Go ahead, Divine.
You could tell that Canelo was very strong because he picked up Bivol physically. He lifted him off the ground. So it's not like Canelo wasn't strong as Bivol and he's small. If you're too small, what are you doing picking up the guy? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Physically just lifted him off the ground.
Yeah.
But Joe, I want to say this though real quick for the viewers is that one thing that shocked me was how fast Canelo came out of the gate and how many power punches he was throwing for the first 4 rounds.
Early, yeah.
And he was trying to knock Bivol out early, which is crazy because when he fought Plant, he did the opposite. Plant was doing well using the jab, using range, doing his thing for 4 or 5 rounds, and Canelo was throwing body shots here and there. But in this fight, I really think that he didn't respect Bivol. I thought he just, hey, this guy is in my way to capture history, and I'm going to knock him out. And he found out about 5 or 6. It's like, oh, now I'm in deep waters. Now this dude is not only big and strong, but he's skilled. And you saw the tide of the fight completely change to where he's laying on the ropes. He's trying to bait Bivol to come in, and Bivol's like, nope, I'm comfortable right here, right behind my jab. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I like
when Canelo didn't have an answer.
Canelo was going like this, and then Bivol was standing where he was standing. He says, "No, you come to me." and then the funny thing was, Canelo did come out of the corner and he stepped to him, and that's when Bivol started teeing off on him. So let me ask you: am I crazy? But in the Canelo Plant fight, before the stoppage, at the time of the stoppage, I had that fight even. I don't know what you had on the scorecards, but I still think people don't give Plant enough credit for what he did early in that fight. I thought he was in that fight. Obviously, the fight was turning, and Canelo was starting to get to him in the later rounds. But I think Plant put a lot of those early rounds in the bank, and I think a lot of people are dismissing how well Plant did boxing on the outside and sticking and moving for points in that fight. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. We've seen Canelo in every weight class that he's fought come across a guy that's stuck and move on him. And arguably he lost against Lara. Arguably he lost both fights against Triple G. He was behind against Kovalev. We've seen him struggle, with guys who can maintain distance and keep him at the end of the jab. So, this just proves that there is some vulnerabilities here in the armor of Canelo Alvarez. And moving forward, I think people are going to look at this fight, and I think they can build upon that. I believe, right?
I had Plant winning the fight at the time of the stoppage. Like, I really thought if Plant would have won that fight and he got knocked out in, Canelo would have to be a knockout to win the fight.
Yeah,
because the way he was boxing Canelo,
I agree.
It was Canelo didn't have nothing for it until the later rounds and everything. If Caleb Plant had more power, that fight would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
And on that note, I don't remember what I had it at the stoppage. I might have had Caleb up by a point or a draw. It was close.
Yeah, I had it even.
And Canelo was starting to come on a little bit
I
around
had
7, 8. Yeah, around 7, 8, 9.
10.
But that was the first time. That was the first time I discovered H Money, and
Wow.
they were having a panel. And I went on there. There was like 10 dudes in there, and I came in there and said, "Yo, I thought Plant was doing well," and they just ripped me to shreds. The entire panel.
No, I thought Plant did
I'm
very
like,
well. I thought Plant did very well.
Like, are you serious right now? They're like, "Oh yeah," and Canelo was up easily, 8 rounds to 2 or some shit like that. But this is what I'm talking about, Joe. In regards to Canelo, when the scorecards came out after the Plant fight, one judge only gave Caleb Plant 1 round. 1. Go back and look at the scorecards of Plant Canelo up to the point of the stoppage.
Yeah, they were all up. He was all up evenly on that, like good on that card, and I don't understand that either because Canelo was only at some point landing like 3 or 4 shots in some rounds, while Caleb was landing the good jab with good pop shots in combos. Like I don't understand that logic of scoring.
Yeah. Shout out to Jules Ward for the $5 super chat. And then he comes back with another super chat and says, Mike Alvarado versus Dimitri Bivol at 175. Who would win? Mike Alvarado could use the shoulder roll and has more skills than Canelo. I mean, Mike Alvarado was I can't. That's a different weight class.
He's trolling. It's funny.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. But if I'm Canelo Alvarez and I'm Eddie Reynoso, I don't take this rematch. I think they could make just as much, if not more, money against Golovkin. And I think if here's the problem. If I'm mapping out, the path for Canelo Alvarez, I say to myself, if I'm going to go back and watch this fight, I'm gonna have to say if I'm being objective, if I'm Eddie Reynoso, my fighter clearly lost. This fight wasn't really competitive. I go back and I do a rematch. Then I have 2 losses in a row. That's just going to put a real big damper on my momentum. And then at that point, my drawing power could be damaged at that point. Then having 2 losses in a row, I wouldn't rule out the rematch, but maybe I would go for the Golovkin fight next and then possibly do the rematch after, right? That's what I would do. But
I don't agree. I don't agree with the Triple G fight. I'm over it.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I'm totally over it. I want to see Andre. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to see it too.
And I think the idea in the conversation.
That's Andre after this fight.
I'm gonna be honest. I think I said before.
Go
if
ahead.
any fighters that are gonna beat Canelo was gonna be Bivol, Zoe Ramirez, and Andre. They're the 3 guys that beat him. Because if you look at
Andre, absolutely.
Because he has power, Andre, and he can box. He's a southpaw. And I look at it like this: he can probably slick. He has a perfect fight.
And for any Canelo fans out there that are saying, "Oh, they want payday, they want payday," well, let me ask you a question: who would make more money in a fight, Bivol or Andre? You think Bivol's going to outsell Andre? It doesn't matter. Canelo's on the card, right? And enough people know it, Andre, anyways.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
And if you want to say, oh, okay, well, Andre needs more experience. Well, is that what you're going to continue to use? Well, what about Benavidez? Benavidez this month is going up against David Lemieux, right? That's a solid challenge. Potentially, Benavidez' chin will be tested against a very strong puncher, right? Fight. So if Benavidez passes that test with flying colors, you basically got 2 guys right there, and Benavidez and Andre, that if you don't fight them and you try to hopscotch around and go back to 175 or fight Triple G, God forbid you take another loss, then I'm sorry, you are ducking. That is my opinion. Like, those guys are there in 168. And that's a fight you can make money in. That's a fight you can sell, that you're going to bring the Mexican and the Americans both together I mean, Benavidez has the whole support of an entire state. The state of Arizona will come in full force for David Benavidez. I know
Absolutely.
this for a fact because
I
I am
agree.
from Arizona. I'm from Phoenix.
I agree. I agree. Because and plus this, the fight will be in Vegas, right?
Benavidez
How
is a good fight.
how close, is Arizona to Vegas? All those Benavidez fans would come up. They would be there, try, they would support Benavidez. You know, people are like saying we're disrespecting Bivol. We're not disrespecting Bivol by saying he's not popular, because not a lot of people in the United States know who he is. So
Facts.
I agree that, like, when you want to talk about name, right? And obviously Bivol had the 175-pound belt. I get that. And this whole thing, oh, you want payday, you want payday, you want payday. I mean, isn't that what every fighter wants? I mean, this is like, it's like Floyd said, this is prize fighting. Of course people want to get paid, right? But you can't sit there and say this guy hasn't done this guy hasn't done that, and then you're fighting other guys that aren't well known, right? So if you want to talk about the best fights for the most amount of money, I liked the Bivol fight, but a lot of people wanted to see the Charlo fight. A lot of people wanted to see the Benavidez fight, right? There was a lot of people
That was definitely
who wanted to see Charlo and the Benavidez fight. So, it is what it is. I mean, this was not a bad fight, but this wasn't a fight that everyone was crazy about either, right? So let's not sit there. This was a tough challenge, don't get me wrong, but we can't sit there and say, like, when you hear Canelo says, who's this guy, who's that guy, who's this guy? Well, again, more people know Jamal Charlo in the United States and David Benavidez than they know Dmitry Bivol, and you can argue that those fights would be more popular, and also the way Fox and the way Showtime promotes fights, they do a much better job than DAZN. I didn't start seeing advertisements for this fight until like the day of. It was horrible. This fight had no push, and I'm curious to see how many people bought this on pay-per-view. I bought the pay-per-view. I'm curious to see how many people streamed it.
People streamed the shit out of it, and I think a lot of it not only was the promotional side terrible, but also people were just so damn confident that Canelo was going to win. They're like, I'm not going to pay money for this. I'll just stream the shit and celebrate Cinco de Mayo. That's what they were doing, right? But
if you look at
go ahead.
I was just going to say, just
let
real quick.
Divine finish it off. Let Divine finish it off. Then you can go right after him, Drew.
Yeah, just real quick. Another thing we have to consider too with Andre and Benavidez both is that they're both going to talk shit too, in the fight build up, right? Benavidez, he's talking shit to everybody anyway, right?
Yeah,
and then
Andre fight was great,
right? And Andre, he's already had choice words for Canelo, right? And so they've already have a little beef and whatnot. So the fight's going to sell. It's going to sell, absolutely, both of them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I think the Benavidez fight would be a great fight, to be honest. And I think it's one that Canelo can win because Benavidez doesn't really move his feet a lot either. He's flat-footed. So that's actually a tremendous fight that Canelo could win because David Benavidez has a fan-friendly style. His defense is not as tight as Bivol or Andre. And then on top of that, he's tough. He's big. He's got great jabs. So that's actually a great fight for Canelo and a winnable one for him at this point.
I look at it like this. North America was the only part of the world that for the subscribers of DAZN that had to pay for a pay-per-view. Everybody else did it. And it turned a lot of people off, and they're going to lose subs over this. And I think that was the reason why a lot of people probably streamed this pay-per-view instead of rent it.
Yeah. And one last thing before I bring Coach in. One thing I was saying is, the DAZN customers have been, again, I'm a DAZN customer. I purchased the $9.99 for a year. I do like DAZN, but a lot of things they did change. They raised the price rather quickly. They was telling people that they weren't going to do the pay-per-view. They did the pay-per-view. For a long period of time, they weren't the greatest fights on DAZN. They were good fights, but they were telling you we're going to give you pay-per-view quality fights. And not all of those fights I thought were pay-per-view quality. They were good, but they weren't like marquee fights. They were good. Then they had to restructure the Canelo deal. They had to restructure the Golovkin deal. So, it seemed as though they were having some issues, and their mission statement wasn't really clear and concise, and whatever the case may be. But it's quite possible that there could be some backlash. People could say, well, all of a sudden now you're making me pay for a pay-per-view fight, and you said you weren't going to do that. There could be backlash, and that could have made a lot of people stream the fight. That's neither here nor there. But I just want to bring Coach in because, like I said, the big narrative I'm hearing today is the reason why Canelo lost was because Bivol was too big. But I think it was more than that. I think that Bivol showed that he was very skillful, and I think he outsmarted Canelo, and I think skills paid the bills more so than the size last night. I'd love to hear your opinion on this fight, Coach.
B, good morning. What's going on, my brother?
Good morning, brother. Nice to see you. Or nice to hear you.
Yes, sir. I watched the fight last night, of course, like everyone else. Good fight. The fight pretty much turned out, it was a one-sided affair. What I love about videos is when you make your predictions and you say things, when people try to put words in your mouth, you can always go right back and play clips. And you know anything about my show, Beeb, I always do that.
You are the biggest accountant on YouTube because you have the most receipts out of anyone.
So Friday, I picked Canelo to win by split decision. And my reason for picking him, and I'm gonna play it today, I say if it's a close fight, like maybe 7-5, I think the judges would give Canelo the benefit of the doubt and he'll win a close fight. That's exactly what I said. I was wrong on that. I said Friday, and I said last night, I say anyone who thinks Canelo, and I've been dropping videos debunking this Eurobomb narrative. One, Bivol is not from Europe, so let's kill that. And the people who hate Canelo, his critics said that he's fighting nothing but Eurobombs. These guys said they never heard of Bivol. They said this is a cherry pick. He picked him because he know he was going to win. I address all of that in my videos I've dropped Saturday and Friday, broke it down.
I watched him. You're right. You did say all this.
And I said if Canelo loses to Bivol, those same people who said that he was fighting a Eurobomb are going to turn around and be advocates for Bivol, laugh at Canelo and be advocates for Bivol and say, yeah, we knew it. Bivol, now they're Dimitri Bivol fans now. And I said they was going to do this, and I'm going to show the receipts. They did exactly, because I know these guys. I'm a marketer. I study the boxing casuals, the fans. I study the people in their comments. Trust me, brother, I do this. I study these people. Now, to answer your question, Canelo Alvarez has no business at 175. He tried to impose his will last night on Bivol, and he ate his shots. Bivol fought very well. Canelo fight in spots. He didn't fight the whole round, every round. I knew he was tired because I called it in the fight. Once he stops and he go to backing up a little, and I saw Canelo mouth open about the 5th round, I called it. I'm going to play it today. I said, Canelo is tired. He's tired. He's getting gas. When you see Canelo stop punching and he willfully backs up to the ropes and he's waving his hand like telling Bivol to come on, he's tired. And that's what I saw last night. 175 is too big for him. He has no business being at 175. Bivol is not a Eurobomb. A lot of those people who were saying that, I think they see that now. They know nothing about boxing, in my opinion. I understand he didn't fight a PBC fighter, but the fact of the matter is they didn't know anything about Bivol, his amateur background, how great of a champion he was, all of those fights he had when he used to fight under Sergey Kovalev's undercard. They didn't know this, probably because he wasn't black. I get it. I understand. And he wasn't from the PBC. I get it. But the fact of the matter is Bivol was big enough to take Canelo's power. And Canelo looked one-dimensional last night. It kind of looked like Oscar Valdez versus Shakur Stevenson. He did not have a plan after I'm gonna walk him down. I'm gonna impose my will. I'm gonna hit him with some hard body shots, try to hit him with some hard head shots, throw the bolo punch he likes to throw, which is the hook and the the bolo punch is. He tried to hit him with those different range of punches. And he didn't hurt this guy. And I think once he saw he couldn't hurt this guy, and this guy was countering him, when Canelo got Bivol on the ropes, and he liked to throw that hard left hook to the body, the bolo punch. What he wasn't anticipating was the counter off of the hooks. He countered him immediately. As soon as Canelo opened up to throw that right hand that he likes to throw to the body or right hand to the head, Bivol immediately came back with the counter 1-2 right down the pipe. And not only that, sometimes he'll throw the 1-2 right down the pipe, which will catch Canelo, but then sometimes he'll throw a 3-4, or maybe even sometimes 5-punch combination when Canelo was walking backwards. Once he got Canelo walking backwards, I say, man, this is going to be a long night for him. And then he got tired. No excuses. Bivol was a better fighter. Canelo is a great champion, but bro, 175 is not for you. You need to stay down at 168. Do not rematch Bivol. It's going to be worse next time. You're not going to beat this guy because he took everything that you had and he ate it. And just, that's just the way I see it. No, this is no hate. I don't want no Canelo fans jumping down my throat. This is no bias. This is exactly what I said. And the 115-113 score is ridiculous. And that was proof to me. And the judges had Canelo winning the first 4 rounds. This is what I was fearing. This is why I said, man, if it's a close fight, they're gonna give it to Canelo. Bruh, there's no way in the hell he won the first 4 rounds. Like where? How? So it is what it is, man. Congratulations to Bivol, man. Not going to take it away from Bivol. Get that man a round of applause. He won this fight. People who said he was a Euro bum when he's not from Europe, bro, just cut it out, man. Just stand by what you said, man. Stand by what you said and just let it go, man. Canelo lost. He need to move back down to 168, and that's all I'm going to say. Leave Bivol alone. You don't need a rematch, bro. It might be worse next time. I had Bivol winning 9 rounds to 3.
Me
if
too.
I wanted to be generous, I may have had it 8 rounds to 4.
Yeah.
Well,
That's it.
Here's a question I got for everybody here. If Bivol goes and fights the winner of Petrovic and Smith, even though that person's going to have 3 belts, including the little light heavyweight championship, will Bivol be the 8th side since beating Canelo?
I can answer that, B.
Go ahead,
I'll give you my answer first. No, Bivol won't be the A side. The A side is pretty much predicated upon, who's the biggest name is, who's the guy that puts the butts in the seats, who has the most notoriety and stuff like that. That's what that's going to be based upon. In my opinion, Bivol is a champion. He's an undefeated champion, and I don't know why he shouldn't be the A side. You know what I mean? From a standpoint of, I'm a champion. This is my weight division. This is a smaller guy moving up in my weight division. But how the A side work is pretty much who has the bigger name and the bigger draw. That's pretty much what that is.
Oh, because I was talking about Petrovic and Smith fighting Bivol, not Canelo. I know Canelo's going to be the A side the whole time, but
Petrovic and Smith.
Yeah, the winner of that fight fighting Bivol.
Oh, damn, that's a good question, bro. It depends on who wins.
I can't even answer that question because I don't know. I don't know.
Hey, Habib, I think it depends on who wins. If it's damn,
Better Biev. If Better Biev wins, you could argue that Better Biev would be the slight A side, maybe. Well, here's the thing, though: is Bivol going to be looked at differently now because he's got that win over Canelo? Is that going to that's got to give him some?
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
He beat the pound for pound best.
Yeah. So Bivol will probably be the A side in that fight. Let me ask a hypothetical here, and this is purely a hypothetical question. If Bivol and Canelo fought at 168, right? Who would you pick? Because Bivol has said that he can make 168. Who would you pick in that fight? Would Canelo have a shot if the fight was at 168, or does Bivol just have that style that he just has Canelo's number? What do you think, Coach?
Yeah, I think Bivol should stay at 175. He don't need to come down. If he maybe he can make 168, but we don't know how effective he can be at that weight because he may be drained or whatever the case may be. He stay at 175. That's the weight that you're acclimated at, and he shouldn't have to come down. There's no reason for him to come down. Why?
No, I'm just saying hypothetically, if the fight was at 168, who do you think Bivol would still win? I'm just curious to see.
I don't. You know what, man? I'm gonna be honest with you, Beeb. I don't know, brother, because I don't know.
It's tough, right?
If he would have came down to
question.
168, how weak he would have been and stuff like that. I don't know. That's a tough question for me.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? What you need?
Same fight.
Yeah, I think it's the same fight too.
Same fight.
In my opinion. I could be wrong, but who knows? They're saying Bivol was 180.
It's just the style. It always gives Canelo problems. That footwork, that movement, the footwork, the jabbing, it always gave him problems.
Yeah.
And Bivol's a master at that. That's what he does.
Yeah, I think it's the same result. You would slightly give Canelo a puncher's chance a bit more. You know, maybe he can find a weakness if somehow Bivol came a little bit underweight or dehydrated or something. But I mean, he is going to rehydrate though. That's the thing. If he makes the weight at 168, he's going to rehydrate. I don't know, man. I think skills pay the bills. Styles make fights. And that's just what I lean on. And, you know, one thing that I like from Bivol as well last night is how he would throw the right hand and then pull out right away. And it forced Canelo to try and counter and reach. And then Bivol started to time that. He started to notice that reach, and then he started following up with the right hand left hook. And started getting that left hook in there. And I think Bivol's confidence is really high because we saw the trend, right? 9, 10, 11, 12. Bivol started to get on his ass. And so he's got the momentum going into a rematch, and he knows he can take his punch. And like Coach said, I think it's a recipe for a disaster. He needs to stay far away from Bivol, and quite frankly, 175, in my opinion. Just 168, there's still a lot to do there. And you can still, you know, have your accolades and continue to be the pound for pound best. You know what I mean? But if you go up there and take a couple L's, it's just not a good look.
I think that it would be the same result. But the thing is, I think Canelo people will try to do a rehydration clause, and I think that'll be a bad look for Canelo.
Mm-hmm.
But this is mostly the same fight because at the end of the day, the rehydration is really going to be the key because he'll probably rehydrate to at least 180 pounds, maybe 185 pounds.
I think the big thing here is if he takes a rematch and he loses 2 fights in a row, that's going to kill his momentum, and it's going to really put a damper on his status in the sport. Whereas if he goes back down, and I don't like the Triple G fight, but it's something that they were talking about for September. So at least I think Mike Coppinger made a good point. And I'm not a real huge Mike Coppinger fan, but I got to give credit where credit is due. He made a good point, and he says this could make that fight a little bit more interesting now because Canelo showed a little bit of vulnerability, and everyone was really favoring him over Golovkin. So now this may kind of even it out a little bit. Whether or not it should, I think some people may look at it and have a difference of opinion now. But now the Golovkin fight becomes a little bit more interesting, and you know, all the other guys are tied up, so he has to fight. He can't fight Charlo now. He can't fight those other guys in September because they're going to be fighting soon, and they're going to need some time to prepare. So I'm not crazy about the Golovkin fight, but I think from a monetary standpoint and just from a fight that's a better situation for Canelo right now, I think he should take the Golovkin fight and then look to fight like a Benavidez or a Charlo or one of those guys.
Yeah, but
I think he should go that way. Go ahead,
Benavidez, Joe, is fighting in 2 weeks. You don't think he can get ready by September?
I think he'd be ready, but I talked to Benavidez's manager, and he said that if that fight happens, it has to be a PBC fight. That's what he said, and I think because of Canelo's tied in with the zone for 2 more fights, I think it would be hard to make that fight. So that's why I would go with the Golovkin fight. From a fan standpoint, I would definitely love to see the Benavidez fight. I would love to see Canelo defend his 168-pound titles against someone who I think really deserves it. And that guy would be Benavidez. I think you can criticize Benavidez. Yeah, you could criticize Benavidez's level of opposition, but he's been ranked. He's been ranked number. And again, that's subjective, but a lot of people can criticize it. But again, he's I don't know
why Canelo wouldn't want to fight Benavidez as far as style is concerned.
That's what I'm saying.
Because Benavidez is gonna bang with them. I mean, it's gonna be a war. And Canelo is slightly better in the pocket, I think. With he's a bit more defensively sound, unless he doesn't have the hunger to be in those wars anymore.
Yeah,
that's also a possibility.
I look at it like this. I'll start after Bivol beat Canelo last night. We weren't gonna see a BS John Ryder start a fight, but if he don't take the rematch, we might still see a BS John Ryder start a fight, which will be horrible if it happens.
Hey, B, and I want to say this to the panel as well. Bro, let me explain something to you. I honestly believe, and I kind of agree with you, B. I think Canelo needs to fight after he finishes with this DAZN deal. Fight David Benavidez. David Benavidez, he's deserving of it. I know stylistically he fights different from Bivol, but he needs to leave 175 alone. Canelo is a great fighter. I can't take nothing from him, but he's not King Kong. He's not Godzilla. Leave 175 alone.
Well, here's my question to you, Coach.
Yes, sir.
Here's my question to you, Coach. Do you think he could beat Joe Smith Jr.?
No. No.
I don't think so either.
No, I don't think so. I think Joe Smith Jr. put no balls on him. I think he put no
Joe
balls
Smith
on
Jr. doesn't have quick feet. Joe Smith Jr. just got a right hand. That's it. That's all he got.
But if Canelo can't hurt Joe Smith Jr.,
Joseph
can't hurt him.
I actually think he beats Benavidez. I actually think he beats Benavidez because Benavidez is too slow.
Well,
there's a certain kind of style that gives Canelo problems. If you don't have that style, you're not gonna give him problems.
Yeah, I don't think he beats any of those guys. I'm just being honest with you. I don't think he beats him. I don't think he beats him. I think he'll get tired and gas out like he did last night. Once he sees that he can't overwhelm you with power, and once he see that you're pushing him back and hitting him with punches, I just don't. I don't see it. The only way we're gonna really know, they would have to fight each other. So maybe Canelo needs to fight Joe Smith Jr. so we can find out. Maybe he needs to fight Beterbiev. But I don't think
Joe is like a throwback fighter. He reminds me of like some Rocky Balboa type shit. He's just gonna keep coming and coming and coming, and he's durable. He's strong. He's rugged. He can crack. And
but Canelo handled that with Triple G. He handled Triple G coming.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Joe Smith is way bigger.
I think I think Bivol is an exception. I think Bivol is an exception to the 175 pounders. I think Bivol is a special guy who does special things. But I don't think anybody just beats Canelo. I just don't see that. It's just the style that Bivol has. His footwork is the key. His footwork. He's got Canelo. Some people call him a slow-footed fighter. Some people call Canelo a flat-footed fighter. I call him a fighter who is not able to consistently maintain a high pace with his feet. That's how I see it. That's why I think he tired so quickly in that fight, because Bivol was pushing the pace on him. But if you ask me, would Beterbiev be able to do that, or Gennady Golovkin, or even Joe Smith Jr.? Those guys are more labored on their feet. I just don't see them pushing the pace on Canelo. I see him being in his comfort zone. And whether it's on the back foot or the front foot, he's very elusive, with the upper body movement. I see him handling those guys easier than, say, Bivol. Bivol has those unique attributes like Shakur Stevenson has, Mayweather used to have, and so on. So I think that styles make fights.
No, I agree 100% that Bivol, I had it 9-3. It could even been 10-2. Bivol outclasses him on a boxing standpoint every single time. A guy like Joe Smith, that can be a rugged, fight. And yeah, like Canelo can style on him, outmove him, outmaneuver him, outpivot him, use his body, his footwork and stuff like that. But Joe is a big, strong dude, man. And this is not Triple G. I mean, Joe Smith is probably walking around damn near 200 pounds before he makes 175.
Yeah, but remember Canelo sparred Frank Sanchez.
Yeah,
who's
but
a heavyweight.
Yeah.
And an exceptional one.
Joe Smith is a
So that's
Golden
what I'm trying
Gloves.
to tell you.
Let me finish. Joe Smith was a Golden Gloves champion. People minimize what Joe Smith can do as a boxer. He's got a great gas tank. He throws a ton of punches, and he's got a very underrated jab himself. And when he gets inside, he's a very fluid body puncher. He puts shots together. He throws a lot of punches. He's got a lot of volume. He fights a fast-paced fight, which Canelo doesn't like. I think Joe Smith Jr. would give anyone problems at light heavyweight because he's so rugged, because he's so aggressive, and because he has better skills than given credit for. I think Joe Smith would give Canelo a lot of problems, and I would pick Joe Smith over Canelo, to be honest with you, because again, if Joe Smith is a
speed, what kind of foot speed Joe Smith had?
I'll be honest with you, Canelo doesn't have foot speed either. So I think that Joe Smith
is quicker than Joe Smith.
Well, how much quicker though? I mean, that's the question. And how much of an impact will it?
My thing is this: if you go for Canelo, if you got Canelo over Joe, then in my opinion, absolutely. If you do, my opinion is that you would have to say Canelo by decision. There ain't no damn way in hell he's knocking out Joe Smith. He would have to outpoint him and outlast him for 12 rounds. But he burned out in this fight against Bivol because he was trying to knock him out, and he couldn't. And he was trying to hit him with his best punch, and he burned out. And I can see him getting burned out. Even if he wins 6-7 rounds, he's going to get burned out. And if you get burned out against Joe, because the difference between let me finish right quick.
Let him finish.
The biggest difference between Joe and Bivol is that Bivol, you can argue, let Canelo off the hook a little bit, right? He didn't take the bait. But if he gets tired against Joe, Joe will walk down and he will beat him up and try to make Canelo submit.
Agreed.
That's the difference. He can't take the risk of getting tired against Joe Smith. He has to last for 12 rounds and box brilliantly in order to win.
The fast pace of Joe Smith would give Canelo problems. And plus, Joe Smith's got a 76-inch reach, right? And he could fight on the inside, but he could also fight on the outside a bit too. That's the thing. I think Joe Smith's skills are totally underrated, and he's got a much harder right hand than Bivol. So if he lands that right hand, he could take Canelo out, and he will try to take him out. You know what I mean? So that's a tough fight for Canelo.
Beeb, can I
don't think Canelo has a problem though.
Let Coach get in real quick, and then we'll let you go what you need. Go ahead.
My brother, I understand. I get it. I understand, it's your opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact of the matter is, we won't know until they fight each other.
Sure.
But, bro, let's be real. Joe Smith, Viterviev will maul Canelo Alvarez. What I saw last night, we saw Canelo land shots that he hit Caleb Plant with, Billy Joe Saunders with, that he heard and stopped those guys with. We saw Bivol eat those shots. Bivol did not get hurt not one time in the fight. Dimitri Bivol did not have a scratch on his face. Literally. His left arm was bruised up from the right hooks that Canelo was catching him with. But literally, like, if he fights Joe Smith would try to kill Canelo. How is Canelo going to keep Joe Smith off of him for 12 rounds? Canelo does not have fast footwork himself. He's a flat-footed fighter with good upper body lateral movement that fights slick in the pocket. That didn't work for him last night. So that tells me that, you know what, at the heavier weight classes, those elite guys, they can take those shots better. He's a small guy. He's only 5'7.5", 5'8", arguably. And when he can't impose his will on you and you can push him back and he gets tired, Canelo got tired. He fights in spots. He's always fought in spots. When he gets tired and those 180 or 85 pounds, the weigh-in of the night of the fight, start landing those punches on him, bro, like he would get killed against Joe Smith Jr. And Beterbiev, then he might have to go to jail after the fight. I like Canelo. I like Canelo, but he's not King Kong, brother. Dude, if he's 175, it's too much. Go back down to 168, stay there. 175, no, I don't see it, fam. I just don't see it. I'm just being honest with you.
You know what that fight reminded me of last night? And that's going to be a funny comparison. It reminded me of Chad Dawson fighting Adrian Adanu, and Adanu was like 5'8", an undersized, real undersized light heavyweight, and Chad Dawson's like 6'2". It was just like that. He couldn't hurt Chad Dawson whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that fight because he was another.
So what I'm saying is,
heavyweight. Go ahead, brother.
So what I'm saying is, Bivol is a boxer. Canelo's never had problems with power punches. He's never had problems with rough and rugged guys. He's had problems with boxers. Okay? Now, if you guys want to make Jimmy into a boxer, fine. He got boxing skills. I agree he's underrated. I also agree that Artur Beterbiev has boxing skills. He can box off the back foot, the front foot, and he's rough and rugged on the inside. He'll throw you down. He'll elbow you. But that's never given Canelo problems. Now, the reason why Canelo wasn't landing a scratch on Bivol is because Bivol got defense. Let me say it again. He's got defense. Canelo also has defense. That's what a lot of people miss. They don't understand. He don't just take punches. Canelo roll, ride, slip, etc. All right? But the difference here was Bivol dictated what happened in that fight from round one. He dictated the pace of the fight. Now, against a Joe Smith Jr., against a Beterbiev, because Canelo will be quicker, he's going to be able to dictate those fights. And that's why, as much as you guys may look at the strength of a fighter, or you may look at the size of a fighter, or you may look at the punching power of a fighter, what really controls fights is who's in control, who's dictating the pace of the fight. And if Canelo can dictate the pace, he can be comfortable. So as much as guys they could throw flurries, they could be high-paced fighters. You know, Pacquiao versus Mayweather is a perfect example. High-paced fighter, but Mayweather dictated, and that pace of the fight became a Mayweather fight. So it's who dictates. And in this case, I think Canelo, he would handle those guys, I believe. But as to the case of Bivol's a different kind of fighter. Once people realize this, I've been watching this dude. I love Bivol a lot. I said it, and I'm going to say it again. He's a better fighter than Vasily Lomachenko. He's a better fighter than Vasily Lomachenko. He can do more things than Vasily Lomachenko can do. He can stand in front of you and still you can't hit him, right? And I don't know about Usyk. I can't talk about Usyk, but I can tell you he's better than Lomachenko. And the point behind my point is, you're looking at a guy who's just exceptionally good. He's been doing this since he's 5 years old. He's exceptionally good at what he does, right? Beterbiev is a big dude, came down from heavyweight, exceptional power and etc. But he got outboxed by Usyk. You know what I'm saying? In the amateurs, you know, he got outboxed by other guys. He's undefeated right now. He's 38 years old, I think. He's old as hell. I saw him get dropped.
36.
So
36.
I'm just saying, 36 or 37.
Like 36.
I think he's 37. But I could check it again. But he's old. He's an old dude. Good. I mean, he's solid. He's solid, but Bivol wanted to fight this dude. And I can tell you, Bivol has a lot of characteristics Canelo has, right? He switches guards. He goes from the 2 guard to the half guard. You know, he throws the jab different ways. You know, Canelo throw that spear jab off the slip or come up with a hook off the slip, you know, swivel the head and all of that stuff. So I'm just saying Canelo is actually much more refined than Bivol in certain aspects. But the point is that I don't think that's what gives Canelo problems. I think what gives Canelo problems is if you're moving so much that he gets himself tired out. Yeah, he was throwing his load, and I think he blew his load in after the 4th. Canelo because he was throwing everything hard. But in addition to that is the fact that he had to move so much. Bivol had him moving. And the thing that wears you down is not so much your hand and punching, it's the movement, right? It's the feet, the cardio, your foot cardio. And I think that's the thing that kills him. You know, he usually walked on guys with a specific type of footwork called precise footwork, where you minimize how much your movement is, and you use mostly upper body movement to feint as if you're coming in, you're closer to the guy, you're further away from the guy than you really are. And that's what he usually used,
you don't think the
which is
clinch
what
wore him out at all?
using his gas tank to walk this guy down.
You don't think the clinch wore him out at all? Because, I mean, you can visibly tell that Bivol's bigger than Canelo, right? Like, bigger, heavier,
Yeah,
probably on fight night.
But the thing about it is, in my opinion, is that if it wore him out, why was he physically lifting Bivol off the ground in the 11th round, I believe it was, because he was frustrated. He just physically lifted him off the ground. If you ain't got no energy for that,
it wasn't the 11th
you wouldn't be
round,
able
it was the
to do
6th
that.
round. The 6th round, he lifted him up in the air because he got fresh.
Oh, the 6th, right.
Because he couldn't hurt the guy. So
yeah,
your argument,
this is what's burning him out, the frustration.
Your argument, no, that only happened one time. Your argument is that, hey, you know, well, Canelo, those other guys, you know, they don't have the footwork. He'll be able to minimize this and do that. It's one flaw in your argument. Canelo can't impose his will and hurt these guys. This is the problem. They're not going to be afraid of his power.
No, but you're talking about a defensive genius that he couldn't land on.
Let him finish. Let him finish his point. What you need, please.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. Listen, Canelo would more than likely, because this is you gave your opinion. I'm gonna give my opinion. He fights Joe Smith Jr. Baturbia, he might get his ass knocked out. I saw times in that fight last night where it looked like Canelo got hurt real bad when he was on the ropes, and it looked like he damn near wanted to give up. He wasn't throwing any jabs. He wasn't using his jab to work his way in. And dude, these guys are bigger fighters. This is what diverse boxing is saying. These are bigger fighters. He's not, whatever advantages that he has on those other guys at 168 or whoever, whatever, he's not going to have those advantages. They're going to eat his power shots. And he's going to have to take some shots. And he gets tired. In the clinch, when you clinch with those bigger guys, it's just going to wear you out. They're too big and too strong.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I'm just saying for me, from what I saw last night, I'm like, damn, if Bivol is, you know, he's not the most physically dominating person from overwhelm you with strength stand, light heavyweight. But I'm like, dude, like, it's levels to this. I don't see Canelo beating those top guys in the light heavyweight division. Me and the brother going to agree to disagree on that. There's probably nothing I'm going to say that he's going to agree with. There's nothing he's going to say I'm going to agree with. It's really just a mute debate or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. But no, he's not going to beat those other guys. Come on, man.
And for all the Canelo fans out there, don't get it twisted, man. Canelo was hurt last night. He got hurt. He got buzzed.
He got buzzed a few times. I agree with that.
At least 2 times.
He admitted it too. He admitted that Bivol had power, man.
He fell into the ropes at one point after taking a clean shot. I think he took a body shot at one point. He kind of hunched over a little bit. And we're talking about a guy in Bivol who's not the biggest puncher in that division. He's not.
No, he's not. That's a good point too, brother. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so if Bivol can kind of buzz him a little bit, and it's not always about buzzing or hurting or dropping a guy, but it's also you are reluctant to exchange because it hurts. He's punching hard, right? Yeah. So if he's not the biggest puncher in the division, and he's already struggling with that punching power, then what do you think these other guys are going to do who punch harder than Bivol?
Yeah. I'm actually picking Joe Smith over Beterbiev, and I'm one of probably the few people that are, and I'll tell you why. Because to me, Beterbiev he's a mid-range guy, most likely, but for the most part, I should say he's a mid-range guy, and he squares up a lot. And I've seen him square up, and I've seen him got knocked down because he squared up. But the big thing is he's so durable and he's tough. And you are right. What you need, he is 37. But Joe Smith is a guy, like I said, who will have the advantages from the outside. I think he really has a good jab on the outside. He really can measure you with that jab and line up that right hand from the outside. And when he does line you up with that right hand, he steps in hard behind it, and he gets deep in the pocket and goes to the body, and he can be a physical guy. I think from the outside and from the inside, he has an advantage over Beterbiev, who, like I said, he's kind of squares up. He's more of a clubber type fighter. He wears you down. He's heavy-handed, but he's not a one-punch guy. But he can hurt you. But he doesn't have that. He's not a very fast twitch, explosive type guy. Joe Smith, on the other hand, I think is a guy, like I said, who has a very underrated jab and is a very underrated boxer from the outside. But where he shines is when he gets in the pocket and he just starts, really letting loose with those body shots, and he's really good at flowing with those body shots. And he comes up over the top with the hook off of those body shots, comes up the middle with the uppercut off those body shots. I think if Joe Smith keeps this fight out of the mid-range against Beterbiev, I think he wins the fight. The big question is, will Beterbiev hit him with a shot that will turn the fight? So I think the volume of Joe Smith, the versatility of Joe Smith, and I can even make an argument that I think Joe Smith is quicker than Beterbiev as well.
He is.
I think Joe Smith can beat Beterbiev, and I'm actually going to pick him for the upset. I think it's a very intriguing matchup.
I'll definitely have to look into more of that. That's interesting.
But
sorry about that. I just went to bathroom break because I had to.
That's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see Canelo probably go back down to 160, 168. I doubt he's going to take this rematch. I think the more they think about it, they're going to say to themselves, this probably isn't the way to go. I think Coach made some great points too as well. I think these guys like even Golovkin was handling. If you want to get really technical, even Golovkin, who's a 160 pounder, was handling Canelo's shots, right?
Right.
So,
right.
If he can't hurt Golovkin, he knocked out Plant, but it took him 11 rounds. Like Plant was in that fight. People think that Plant got destroyed in that fight, which he did at the end when he got knocked out. But I still think Plant was in that fight. And you can even make an argument that even at 168, you can argue that Canelo is probably undersized, because how many guys are smaller than Canelo at 168? Really?
Correct.
In terms of the physical dimensions. So you can even argue he's undersized at 168, but he's even more undersized at 175, to Coach's point. So, the one thing you can probably say is he does have enough power to probably hurt those guys. And when you do have a guy like Benavidez who's going to stand and trade with you and is not going to move a lot, then you're going to have opportunities, right? So that fight, from an entertainment standpoint, in my opinion, and just from a stylistic standpoint, that's a can't miss fight. So I'd love to see that fight, and if it's going to take a little while to get it, then so be it. But hopefully, Golovkin and Canelo probably just get that fight out of the way, because that looks like it's probably going to happen at some point before the end of the year is out. Maybe they can get that fight out of the way in September. And I don't know who this third fight for Canelo is going to be with DAZN and with Eddie Hearn, but it's going to be interesting. I just don't think that it should be against Bivol, though, in my opinion. I agree with Coach wholeheartedly.
I think there's a lot to do still in 168. I think there's money to be made. I think he can defend titles. It's one criticism that he gets is that he doesn't defend titles. There's still stuff to be done. And maybe if you get your confidence back, you learn some stuff defending your titles a few times, fight some good fighters. Maybe you can revisit 175 and see how 175 unfolds in the next year or so. But I want to say too, though, Joe, that we've been blessed, man, in 2022 so far. I think it's like 5 weeks in a row we've had back-to-back fights, like every single weekend for the past
good
5
fights.
weeks.
Good fights,
and it's beautiful to be able to be a part of this, because it's been a very long time since I remembered having a string of fights come together like this. And we have another big one coming up this upcoming weekend with Charlo and Castaño. And before I get up out of here, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that fight.
Well, a lot of people are picking Charlo to knock out Castaño. I think it's going to be a good fight, but I still think that Castano took the shots of Charlo, and I think his movement gave Charlo a lot of problems. And I even think that surprisingly, to me, Castano was able to hurt Charlo a few times in that fight. A lot of people are picking Charlo to win by knockout. Um, I have a feeling that at the end of the night, I'm going to have Castano up on my scorecard, but possibly Charlo may get the decision. But I'm gonna say Castano will win the fight. I think Castano can outbox because I think that ambush style of going in and out and his movement and just the way he tucks his chin. And he's able to, he's in really good shape as well, too. So when he does get hit, he's able to recover from those shots. And that has a lot to do with conditioning as well. People think it's just, the physical durability of the guy's neck or whatever. But a lot of that has to do with the way the body is able to utilize oxygen and and allow the brain to recover by, getting that oxygen flow back to the brain. And that has to do with cardio. And a lot of people underestimate that. And I think Castano, will fight a fast-paced fight. I think he'll try to be more aggressive. And Charlo it can counterpunch, but he's most effective when he's the aggressor. So I'm going to go with. I think I'm going to go with Castano. I think he's going to outwork Charlo. I think the movement is still going to be a problem.
I don't think Charlo can avoid losing. To be honest, I think it's going to hurt him quite a bit.
Yeah.
Especially with all the other antics that have been happening. Him fighting people at fights and drinking and doing all this other silly shit. And a lot of people have their doubts right now on whether he's going to come in shape and is taking this seriously. So,
yeah,
I hope it doesn't come to bite him in the ass. But anyway, it's another fight that we have to talk about and commentate and continue to grow and expand boxing. And that's what it's all about. But look, Joe, I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem, man.
For the gentleman next to you on the screen here, first time I'm meeting you, man. Good to talk to you.
Yeah,
and
Coach is a good dude, man. Coach is an awesome dude.
It's good to be part of the panel, man. You guys take it easy out there.
All right. Yeah, before I get up out of here, I'm going to go to both you guys, and Divine makes a good point. Who do you guys think is going to win next week against with Charlo and Castano? Let's be our closing thoughts here. We'll go with you first, Coach.
Beeb, I'm not gonna lie, man. I don't want to give my prediction right now because I'm
all right. No, you can hold it off. It's a tough fight.
All jokes aside, Beeb, it's 50-50, man. Like these fights, I'm like, damn, man. I don't, because I thought Castano edged it out in the last fight, and they gave it a draw. So yeah. I'm like, what is it that he can do differently to try to convince these judges? Sure. Because he's a foreigner, and stuff. You get what I'm saying? Like he's from, he's not an American, and these judges lean towards the hometown guy. Sometimes any country you go in, it's like that. That's just what it is. What is it? Can he do differently? I might give the edge to Castano because I think from a lifestyle standpoint, in between fights, from what I see from Jermell Charlo, and I like Jermell Charlo a lot. My only knock on him is in between fights, his lifestyle, and in the fights, he gets very emotional, and he doesn't listen to his corner, and he fights with that pent up anger, rage, whatever, and he gets he has a one track mind, and I think that you can outthink him in the ring. That and I like Jermell Charlo a lot. He's like one of my favorite top 3 fighters in boxing right now. So I'm just going back and forth on that. Which version of Jermell Charlo we're going to see? Are we going to get the one that fought Tony Harrison, that loads up on his shots, telegraph that right hand, have that clubber lane type mentality? I'm gonna get him, and he fights tight. He fights tight. Also
fights off of emotion, doesn't he, Coach?
Yeah.
Fights off of emotion, right?
Yes, sir.
Little too wound up.
And that's what's getting to my mind. So just give me to about Friday, man. But I'm kind of leaning towards Castano because of those factors.
Got you. What you got? What you need? Who do you like before we get up out of here?
I'm with everybody here. I think Castano is going to take it, but I don't know if he'll get the decision. I like Charlo as well. Good mentality, everything, but I think Castano, he has a thing there. He has a formula, and I think they're going to make adjustments. So, it is what it is.
I got you. All right, I was gonna get ready to get up out of here, but I'm gonna Fight Doctor wanted to jump on for a quick one. I'm gonna let him burn for a bit. Go ahead, Fight Doctor, before I get up out of here.
Yo, shout out to you, Beep. Shout out to Coach. Shout out to What You Need. Just want to make a real quick point. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Weight classes exist for a reason, and I have always when this fight with Bivol first came up, there was chatter about how Alvarez would do against Beterbiev, and I maintained then, just as I maintain now, Beterbiev would stop Alvarez without question. Weight classes exist for a reason. What we saw last night is we saw a guy who tried to sit back, play the punches game, pot shot, and he tried to impose his will on a bigger guy. Look, Alvarez, as of late, his opposition has not been, let's say, they haven't been exactly the murderer's row. Okay? Guys who when Alvarez puts his hands on them, they fold like a deck of cards, which is what we've seen his last couple of fights. Well, Bivol, he didn't come for that. He's like, no, dude, no, man, I'm not here for that nonsense. I'm here to fight. And what you talking about? Yeah, I did not get that memo. And when Alvarez wasn't able to impose his will, when Bivol decided that he wasn't going to go along with the game plan, they didn't have a plan B, Team Alvarez. And about the 7th, 8th, 9th round, it seemed like, to me, they were in full panic mode. So, make a long story short, Alvarez has no business at light heavyweight. And he does not beat any of those guys. The top guys at light heavy, look, the secret is out. Okay, the guy's going to sit back and try to play the punches game. He can't hurt a light heavyweight. I mean, we're talking about guys who walk around at 200 pounds, coming down from heavyweight to fight at 175. Alvarez does not look. Super middleweights will go on rounds with Alvarez. So, yeah, he needs to stay out of light heavyweight. And I leave you with that.
All right. Well, I'm about to wrap this up, but anyone want to say anything before I go? Coach, you got any last words or anything?
Yes, sir. I totally agree with the Fight Doctor, man. Listen, stay the hell away from 175. Again, I like Canelo. He's a great fighter, but he's not Superman. He's not Superman. Beterbiev will kill him. Joe Smith will stop him as well. You can't hurt those guys. The loading up on shots, it's not going to work. Stay at 168. You have business to do there. Defend your undisputed titles like the champions of the past have. They defended their titles. And that's how you see who's who, what's what. We got a good fight last night. Us content creators have a lot to talk about. So I'm really happy about that. We're keeping the sport alive, B. I'm going to keep debunking the narratives. That's what I do. I'm going to keep debunking the narratives with receipts. Fight Doctor, man. I'm going to have a show at 3 o'clock, man. Brother, please stop by. I never had you on the show. I want to have you on the panel today, man, so we can talk boxing. And that's it. That's all I have to say.
All right, brother. All right.
Yeah, real quick. Shout out to Coach Malachi, brother. I'm going to try to make that show. Today is Mother's Day, so I got to go spend time with moms and grandma. But I think 3 o'clock, if I can make it, brother, I'll be there.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, sir. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
All right, Fight Doctor. Any last words before we head out of here?
Listen, I think something is to be said about basic boxing, which is what Bivol was doing yesterday. Basic boxing. I mean, just catch and shoot, subtle movements. I mean, he was moving, but he wasn't like up on his toes running. It was just boxing, beautiful boxing. But it's not like he was doing anything extraordinary. Just basic boxing. Okay, and in my mind, that tells me Alvarez has no business at 175 pounds.
All right, brother. All right, man. Well, make sure you check us out tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Ringside Reporter podcast with myself and Eric Loda. And yeah, man. I mean, it was a very impressive performance from Bivol last night. And it's gonna be interesting to see if Canelo does go through with the rematch or not. I don't think he should, and most people don't think he should, but we'll see what happens. Fight Doctor, wish you a happy Mother's Day to your family, everyone in your family, all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day, and I'll be back tonight at 6 o'clock with my man Eric Lauder. Peace out, everyone. Have a great one.
Peace.